All right, Andrew, you have the microphone.
All right,
Give us your
so
thoughts.
Everybody has
I
a microphone, Zach.
Yeah, I
I
was trying to be
don't
the detective here. Look, you're just give me what I need to know, all right? Or I'm gonna send you the gas chambers.
I don't have notes in front of me. I don't have specific points I want to refute or anything. I mentioned it earlier off recording, but I feel like your viewpoints are from I said comic superiority, but I'm going to go with the comic first perspective, which is understandable. Like you guys are coming from this is where it was created. This was where it was originated. This is where all the details came from. So we're looking for those in the movie. I'm coming from looking at the movie as its own entity. I'm looking at the Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman, separate from how I look at the comics Batman, from how I look at the animated Batman. This was my preferred Batman when given the character of someone whose parents were murdered in front of him and then grew up never working through that trauma and then instead internalizing it and using it to go out every night and fight crime in a costume. Bruce Wayne has mental issues. I mean, in a fantasy perspective, in a fiction
You can
perspective,
just
comic
boil it
perspective,
down to mommy daddy issues if you really want to.
yes. In a comic book fiction fantasy perspective, yes, you can have a character that is both suave and charismatic in this almost Robert Downey Jr. billionaire philanthropist playboy character by day and dark brooding embodiment of fear character by night. Yeah. In my mind, ideally, I would want this character to be messed up in the head, emo, depressed. He is trying to turn the city that killed his parents, who were in his eyes completely innocent and good people, and killed them, and wanting to turn that city into a better place, but from a place of darkness. This dude's insane. I saw a video recently on TikTok where it was a comedian, granted, talking about how the Batman was a little autistic, which was quite funny, actually, some of the jokes he made. But the fact that he practices karate, obsesses over certain things, and goes out at night dressed as a bat, understandable. I like this portrayal of the Batman the most because he seemed the most human, less superhuman and more just human capabilities, pushed to the extreme of dedication and determination. Selena Kyle and her character and how she interacted with the Batman, I really didn't care that she was a Falcone. This coming from someone who hasn't interacted with comic books and origins in many years didn't bother me, didn't even cross my mind. This just coming from someone who is not a comic book fanatic or just hasn't been in the comic book realm in a long time didn't bother me. I did not see the Batman Catwoman relationship as romantic at all. From the Batman side, it was very much you're like me. You have traumatized past with parents. You are resorting to the underworld to try and deal with that. You are like me. I am drawn to you in that aspect. In Catwoman's eyes, it was I'm a criminal. I am a woman. I use my seductive nature to get what I want. But also, you are a good person and I don't want to hurt you. I never saw a romantic connection, but more of a twisted kind of like traumatic, almost high school codependence energy from them. I never saw romantic. Race changing, that doesn't bother me whatsoever. Only because I view the movies as separate entities from the comics. I would have an issue if I'm reading a series and all of a sudden they changed up the race in character and portrayal of a character in the midst of the series. But because this is a new adaptation, a new quote unquote universe, side universe, whatever, that is inspired by the Batman comics, as all adaptations are, I give it a lot of leniency because I see it more as inspired by than this is the adaptation of this story. I really enjoyed the portrayal. I really enjoyed the Penguin. I've seen a lot of interesting theories online. I loved the Riddler. I've always thought certain Batman villains, specifically those of the Riddler, the Joker, Frost, Mr. Freeze, Batman, his villains have always been on the insane side, shown in the fact that they're held in a asylum and not a prison or super prison or maximum security prison like Batman or the Flash's villains or anyone else's villains. His villains are held in a asylum, which shows that all his villains are insane. I liked the no thing just because to me it showed his insanity. I understand your guys's dislike for his mask. They did explain that the mask was from an army surplus store, and specifically it was a winter mask. And the informational bit about the mouthpiece is that the reason the mouthpiece is there on his mask, because it is a winter mask, it is used to break up and dissipate the fog, so that if you're a sniper in a snowy, wintry, cold environment, enemies cannot see your breath. So that's why it was like that. I don't know the reason why he grabbed that mask. I'm assuming it was going off of both of trying to make him as uncomfortable and scary as possible, but also he was looking for a mask that would show as few physical features as possible without hampering, just ease of access and few physical features. And he saw something that covered in everything, including his mouth, and is easily accessible, and possibly planning for the future of having other people buy it as well. He just saw that, and there was a lot in stock at some army surplus store and grabbed it. I don't know. That was just me arguing for the other side. It is not a perfect movie. It is so long. It is so long. I do not do well with 3-hour movies. I remember getting to the end of him locking the Joker up and being like, man, I hope this is the end. And there was like another half hour plus in it. And I was not enjoying that. I agree with the weird way that the actress of the mayor did the getting shot scene, getting shot in the shoulder, holding her stomach. I don't know. That was weird. And Zach, I get what you're saying, how you thought it was Venom. I thought it was like, oh, he just used straight adrenaline. And I like their portrayal of him being shot with adrenaline. Realistically, it takes time for any chemical entering your system to get in your bloodstream and affect your brain. Nothing would work that fast, especially the way he administered it. It would have to get to his heart and then to his brain and then take effect, which takes time. Based on the context, I thought it was adrenaline. I thought that's what they're going for. I could see how it was Venom. I don't think it gave him the superhuman strength that Venom would give him. Not Venom. Is it Venom?
You're right. It is Venom.
Okay, that's what I thought. I would like to see how Bruce Wayne grows as a character, because I always thought Batman was the Batman and Bruce Wayne was the character, and not the other way around. Bruce Wayne is the mask that he puts on. I'm looking forward to how that portrayal expands in the future. I hope it doesn't stay the same. While I think that the Batman is a broken human being, I don't think that excludes him from being able to grow as a person, especially the more he interacts with allies and grows as an adult and a human, and especially with the trials that he gets put through. We should see both the Batman and Bruce Wayne grow, especially with this realization that I feel like he had at the end of the movie, where he needs to be a bigger person and help out Gotham in a more public light as Bruce Wayne. I saw a good theory where the Joker is not going to be the villain in the second movie, but the third movie, which you guys talked about, where they will be broken out at the end, and even like where Harvey Dent. I thought those were awesome. I thought that concept was awesome, because I didn't even think about the concept that the DA was no longer in the picture. I'm looking forward to what they do with the series. I think the following movies will determine the status of Robert Pattinson's Batman, but based on this movie itself, if it was standalone, I would say it is my personal favorite. I still think The Dark Knight, I think, is still the best Batman movie. As far as Batman movies go, The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. But this one set up the potential to have something that might beat it as far as a Batman movie. And I appreciated that it wasn't a Batman origin story, if that makes sense. How long did I just go off without taking a breath?
For about 15, 20 minutes.
Heck yeah.
Probably more like 15.
I think those were all my substantial thoughts on it.
Which for me, I put this Batman movie in a separate category from the other ones, since it is it's a different outlook on Batman.
Something
And
that
then
I
you can
mentioned
tell,
to you, Zach, earlier when Payson was having mic problems in a previous recording.
yeah,
Robert Pattinson refused to take steroids, like most other actors that portray a superhero during their training. He did not take steroids, so his physique was 100% natural, and I love that. I mean, while it wasn't as aesthetically and physically appealing, it was more of a realistic.
honestly, it worked for his Batman anyways, because his doesn't seem as aggressive.
And I agree with you both on saying that this is a very young Batman. This is him 2 years into his, and it shows that he is very inexperienced, both with some of the mistakes he's made in his detective work, but also his combat abilities, his lack of using his tools, his attitude as Bruce Wayne. It is a very young, immature Batman. And I look forward to seeing how they grow the character in the future. If they stay the same, I will say something completely different in the future. And I'll say, I hope I will say that they did wrong. Because if they do not grow this character and make him grow and show gaining of experience, then they did wrong. This is a Batman that needs growing. It is not a perfected Batman.
No, I can understand that and see that.
So that is all my rebuttal on the what I missed based on what I heard from the podcast.
I feel like there was something else I was going to bring up, but I don't remember what it was.
I do agree that that Catwoman was not really a necessity in this movie. She didn't do much of anything.
She was just to me, she was only there specifically for that end scene where Batman had to choose whether or not to have her not kill Falcone
I
or to
see
kill
her.
him.
I see her as a foil. She, at a lot of times, helped move the plot in a specific direction and helped to give information that otherwise would have needed another way to been given to the Batman and provided for good, serious, emotional moments. It provided moments for the Batman to show his character and to show his ideals. Other than the fact that it allowed the ability for the Batman to show his non-killing and how serious he was about the non-killing ideal, she didn't have much of a purpose. I've always disagreed with Batman's non-killing ideal and the concept of Batman. I think someone who is as dark and as embodiment of fear as he is should be okay with killing. But I appreciate that is a concrete part of his character.
I still find it odd. His whole persona is for this movie is I am vengeance, and yet he doesn't really get violent. It should just be I am fear at that point.
Yeah. I understand that I can agree with. I can agree with that point. I think again it goes to an immature Batman and the fact that they're trying to look at it from a different light. I would have liked to see more action. I would have loved to see more action.
I mean, for a Batman movie, yes, but I feel this was mostly just to get you to understand what this Batman is more geared towards. I feel like we'll see a lot more action in the next movies. I hope we do. I feel like this one was just an introduction to this version of Batman that we're seeing currently.
Payson, do you have anything to say against my points? I mean, you've got a lot to say against my points, apparently.
The biggest one, there's two that I remember being the biggest ones to talk about with you, or that I just disagree with you entirely. At least the way I view it, comic books are a visual medium. It's also got a storytelling medium, but it's a visual medium. What I don't like is I don't like it when they do a race change of a character, because then that's just trying to profit in your own, put in your own agenda, which they kind of already did with that Catwoman's line in the middle of the movie anyway. So, but it's unnecessary, doesn't need to happen. So why do it is the question that then gets asked. So, I mean, that's my reason for it.
Like I will understand, as I think I discussed with you in the other video, I do understand, but if they choose an actor like they did for this one with Jim Gordon that can portray the character well enough and doesn't focus on anything other than just portraying the character, I think it's fine. Like with him and Nick Fury, I think even though they were both face changed, I think they both did a phenomenal job as that character specifically.
What was the line, Payson, that you were talking about? I don't remember what it exactly was. You have better.
Oh, it was the one because I remember it quite vividly
Yeah.
because I went on like a 10-minute rant on it on the video.
Yeah.
It was how she said, I just want to kill all of the rich white people who take advantage of the world and can get away with anything.
Okay, so that also took me aback during when I was watching. When
It was just so very direct
yes,
and
I
aggressive.
think
I was not prepared for that.
I
It
think
just felt like they were no longer hiding it at that point.
so. I have a handful of points on that. The way it was written into the script was jarring. It came out of nowhere and it took me by surprise. I was like, whoa, now we're getting socio-political.
Kind of
Like,
like what
this
they
is-
did with Wonder Woman 1984, where they
So
were kind of
yeah,
just
but
speaking to the
yeah.
audience.
Yeah,
Wonder
but not
Woman
as-
it
84
wasn't
was
directly.
the entire movie.
Yeah.
This one was just a line. It was a line in a very serious moment, which caught me off guard. And in the movie, yes, I think if they wanted to include a line like that, it needed to be somewhere else. It needed to be worded differently.
Yeah.
But based on the character of Selena Kyle Catwoman that they had created, it makes sense. The world
It
she
makes
has
sense, but
lived
it's also I don't understand it because she is a cat burglar, so I think it wouldn't matter to her whether they're white or not. It's whether or not they have money.
yes, but on the statement of her character being from what I could tell, African American ethnicity,
I don't
based on
remember what her ethnicity is.
it was
Actually.
Italian American, obviously, with
Right.
partially Italian American with Falcone, but based on her skin tone and the statement itself, it leads towards the assumption of African American ethnicity, is the safest way I could put that. It is understandable with a lot of the race issues that America has had in history and a lot of just the socio-ethnic issues that have been circulating over the past decade, in the concept of eat the rich and how the majority of the top 1% is white people, white old dudes, and the people that run the country is old white rich dudes, and how a very small percentage of billionaire CEOs are Black people, and an even smaller percent of that is Black women. Like, it makes sense for the righteous indignation that the African American and the impoverished and African American community has, especially those impoverished by the benefit of the white rich CEOs. Like, yes,
Well,
he was
also looking
taking
back at if you look at it like that, looking back on it, most of those white rich people, the reason they're rich is because their family's probably been here for many generations, so it's just been passed down from generation
yes,
to generation.
yes.
So they
That-
had
Most of
a
those families,
head start,
and most
That
of
is
those
a good
if you
families,
could say they had a head start.
and a lot of those families escape persecution from other countries because of religious beliefs. So I mean, I just don't think it should have been brought up in a movie.
like I was about to lead
At
into
all.
that seemed to be an obviously socio-politically charged line with the character they had created and established throughout the movie. That line made sense personally towards that individual character. It was put
But
in a
it
wrong
didn't-
way, in a wrong
I was about
time.
to say, if they were going
the
to have
scene.
a line similar to it, they could have, but they didn't need to have it so aggressive and during a
Because
period like that.
that sentiment makes sense
No.
for the demographic that Catwoman is,
It's also a racist sentiment because she's taken a whole race and saying
which is
to all
fine.
these people, it's not fine. You just
Yes,
said
it is. Based on the statistics of what that statement is based off of, for the perception that is held with that community, the impoverished African American community, and the statistic of how many billionaire CEOs and millionaire CEOs are with rich old white dudes. It makes sense. I'm not saying it is factually or statistically. I don't have that background. I'm saying it makes sense for the perception of the character that was created.
And I say, I don't care. It shouldn't have been in this movie.
I'm saying it makes sense for the character, which it doesn't make sense for the scene and the way it was delivered or written. It took me out of that scene, and it took a little for me to focus back into what they were trying to do in the scene. But for the perception of the character of the world that they lived in, it made sense. But the way it was written into the movie did not make sense.
We can save this for an unrestrained. We're going to go on this for a while.
Because I feel like in this world, there's two sides of a coin. There's the facts of the matter and the perception of the matter. And both are equally important. The facts of the matter are obviously important because that is what is factually correct and true. And the perception of the matter is also important because that is what the public eye and the public believes is true. And those both have equal weight.
Okay, got a question. What do you do when they both coincide with each other and one conflicts with the other one? What do you do then?
Then you get the world we live in, a world of different experiences and different states of living and a complex, complicated, messed up world.
May I have a personal request?
Yes.
Here?
I know what you're saying.
I feel this conversation is getting us nowhere. I feel like it is getting
We'll save it for an unrestrained.
for some. So let's just drop it all and move on.
So
other thing
this was the Batman with my input.
Yeah, the other thing I did
Everything
want
it
to
entailed.
You're
the other
fine.
thing I did want to comment about was the whole thing about Selena Kyle being a Falcone kind of derails the whole character, as that then changes her whole aspect with Batman or Bruce Wayne in this aspect. And that's why I think me and Zach actually did talk about this in the review, why the whole Bat and Cat flirtatious relationship that they've had over the comics, why it doesn't work there at all as much as it would have otherwise. And you even admitted it yourself that it really doesn't work.
I thought I said that it didn't bother me that she was a Falcone. I just said it was in a romantic relationship.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're talking about.
I never saw the Batman and Catwoman as romantic. I saw it as like traumatic codependency.
I saw it as him looking at her as an ally, and then she looking at, because I don't even know, because at first it was him as an ally, and then in some scenes it was like she was interested in him, and then others it was like she was trying to make him interested in her.
Also,
So I wasn't really sure where she stood in this.
I will also add again, this is from someone who has not read many Batman comics at all, and is the majority of my perception of Batman came from the movies and the animated series and what I've seen outside of actually reading the comics. And again, these different perspectives, I want to iterate again, is that you guys are coming from what the comics is, and the comics being your first and kind of like reference material for these adaptations, whatever adaptation they may be, the series, the animated series, the Christian Bale trilogy, or this one. And I'm coming from a not diving deep into the comics, knowing just what I know from animated series and basic comic knowledge, and then movies. This is from someone who looks at them all separately.
No, and I understand. I was just asking, like, I just don't know where she was standing in this kind of weird dance the two of them had. If she was just using him, or if it was like,
it seems
because we knew where Batman stood.
It just seemed like the directors wanted to change it the way that
the place.
Yeah, it felt like the directors wanted to just change it when the scene fit for it. So
that is understandable. From my personal perception of the Batman Catwoman relationship, to me, it has always looked like a unhealthy high school relationship where they are both mentally ill, traumatized, and latching onto each other because they both share a similarity in their traumatic background. There is not much romantic backing to it other than the fact that you also have a traumatic past dealing with your parents. That's how I see it. That is all. So I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying this is just my perspective as a TV majority perception. If that makes sense.
But I think all me and Zach are saying is you would like it our way too, I think is what we're trying to say as well. So we're kind of like saying, why change it? You're kind of asking us, why don't you like it this way? Or trying to find out why we don't like it this way. And we're trying to say, why change it at all? I think is what me and Zach are kind of.
I think
and Zach, go ahead and speak up if I'm putting words in your mouth or something.
No, I get that. My thing is, I don't want something to stay consistent. As a consumer, I get tired of something staying the same. If I go into a movie knowing the plot of the movie, like if it was a direct adaptation of a comic story, whether I had read it or not, I wouldn't want that. I want something new as a consumer. And I feel like that's how they approach these movies, that they're drawing from the comics as inspiration and then trying to make a story, because they want to shock everyone and be like, whoa, this is something I've never seen. That's how I would work as a director. I completely and 100% understand wanting to go into an adaptation of something that you have loved for years and have it be faithful to what you love. I completely understand that. My personal preference is that I want something new. I don't ever reread things. I don't ever rewatch movies unless there is a reason to rewatch it, like someone recommending it or a watch party or a party or something. I don't reread or rewatch things just because the way that I am is that I like new content. I like new things that I've never experienced. But I 100% understand wanting things to be consistent. I get that. I 100% understand.
Zach's computer just committed suicide, so
he's frozen. Which, however, I will add the very end, which is why the dynamic the three of us have is very good for a review podcast.
Well, it's very good. One, because we all have different opinions, and I'm very close friends with you. I think we've grown up together essentially. And Zach, I think I've known him for like maybe 6 years, but it ironically clicked so well that it ended up staying relatively good, where other ones who I've known longer just dissipated.
So like we make a very good trio. Oh, he's gone completely. We make a good trio. And the important thing is that despite our differing in opinions in fictional things, like we're still friends. And I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, which is, I still like having these conversations, even though we don't agree. And sometimes it can be aggravating as heck. But when somebody can't see the other side, yeah,
like I get it. I get why you want something to be honoring and respectful and true to what you have grown up with. And I am on the other side of the coin where I always want something new. I do not want something that stays the same.
Yeah, which I get
personalities.
I get, like, but what I'm saying is when I do that, I would just like the characters to stay true to the source material, and also even if the story isn't completely verbatim from the comics exactly, to like harken back to like some of the stuff, like Dark Knight Rises, even though it doesn't like completely harken back to, and it's considered one of the worst Dark Knight film, even though it's not like a verbatim of Nightfall, you can see the elements of Nightfall in it. The Dark Knight, you can see elements of different comic books with Batman and Joker, and then the rise and fall of Two-Face, you can see different elements of that, even though it's a new story. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm coming from, is it needs to stay true to the characters, but it can still be a new story. I'm fine with that. I would just like for it to, if you're not going to do it verbatim, which I'm 100% okay with you not doing it verbatim as a comic book, harkening back to the original artwork that made it famous, because then otherwise to people like me, and I don't know if Zach's the same way, but I'll just say for people like me, it just feels like you're taking the name of it only and just putting it out there just to make money, and that's it. You're not trying to sell a good product, you're just trying to make money, easy money, that's it.
I completely understand that. And I am okay, and I appreciate different portrayals. I kind of see it like paintings, like abstract paintings. If this is just somewhat of a metaphor and weird allusion to, I see it as like abstract in the definition of art. Once art is put into the world, the meaning of the art is in the hands of the observer. With like abstract paintings, it doesn't matter what the artist was painting. It matters what the viewer is seeing because that's what they're getting out of it. Yeah, that's how I view all art. So I don't see this as a continuation of the Batman comic.
My thing is, it's a difference between going and looking at art and seeing it as different, or seeing it in a different way than somebody else might, and then changing that art, taking it and physically changing it, which is what some of these movies are doing by physically going in and changing characters.
I understand that. I'm thinking, like, as far as like the race change and the sex change, I see that as along the lines of,
there wasn't really a sex change, I don't think, not in this one,
not in
ironically
this
enough.
one, but in
which
previous,
was a save from grace.
In previous, in different series and adaptations, like Eternals. I didn't notice it because I didn't know anything about Eternals. The more niche something gets, the more I feel like acceptable it gets because less people know about it. But still,
I will say to that point, to me, it just seems like lazy writing, because you don't want to take the boundaries and figure out how to navigate through to get something that would actually take time and a creative process to get to. Instead, you just want to take the stuff from somebody else and rearrange it how you see fit to make your own story and make it fit the way you want it. That's how I see it.
Can you speed run everything you just said? Because I didn't hear any of it.
It seems more like they're creatively bankrupt. So they're just instead of just taking the boundaries of something that would need like a creative process to think, okay, you put these characters that we know verbatim how they would think in a situation like this, how would they react? Instead of going through that process, they just trash everything except for the names of the characters and keeping them in name only, and then trying to make their own story without ever referencing any of the source material or hearkening to the source material or any of that stuff. And to me, it's the point to where Hollywood's creatively bankrupt. Because I mean, look at old movies and then look at new movies, and you can kind of see that.
I agree. I do agree about the creative bankruptcy thing. I think Disney in particular is washed up. Like, you can see it over the past decade, their TV shows have gone downhill so much. The difference between Phineas and Ferb and like Sweet Life of Zach and Cody and Wizards of Waverly Place, when they were at their peak, when everyone perceives them at their peak, to whatever they have on show now, like it's just the same thing or just nothing creative or nothing funny. Like, I totally understand creative bankruptcy. That's why certain TV shows just die after a certain time. Doctor Who, I stopped watching because the writing got bad. They ran out of good science fiction ideas. Supernatural, I stopped watching because the writing got bad. They ran out of supernatural horror ideas. Like, the writing will get bad at a point because they've gone through everything good they can think of. And I think even like comics, all of the comics go through that, which is why they have their New 52 and what did you call it? Kingdom Come. Like, the reason they have these, I guess you could call them spinoff, where they're slightly different than the
Kingdom Come wasn't different in the timeline. See, that's the difference between Kingdom Come and like revamps like New 52 and Future State, which is another crappy one. Kingdom Come is hearkening from, it's in a futuristic portion of the DC universe, and it doesn't trash any of this stuff at all, whereas New 52 and Future State do.
By the
Rebirth
way,
is a lot more like Kingdom Come than New 52, as it harkens back some of the good stuff that was brought and was canceled out by New 52.
So,
and bringing it back into continuity.
I haven't read New 52. My perception of or the majority of the main timelines, the majority of my knowledge of the main timelines comes from what I have read in the past and just outside knowledge of like the comics. I kind of view New 52 as a what if. Just what if the original timeline took a different path and they made different decisions and other characters made different decisions. I just see it as an alternate timeline in the same way I see the movies. I view them all separately, and I understand. I understand this is the concrete. This was how it was created, so they should stay true to how it was created. I just kind of see it as like Christopher Nolan, Adam West, Robert Pattinson I see it as a quote unquote how I would do Batman. Given his background, given his experiences, this is the conclusion that I would come to, but that's all I see it as. I don't, but also I have been burned so bad by the Percy Jackson series. The Percy Jackson series still to this day is my favorite book series because it is the series that got me into reading and got me into fiction. And the Peter Jackson, Percy Jackson series we have is so awful that I've been burned so bad that I just kind of accept everything that is just not as bad as it, but I get it. Like, yeah, I 100% get it.
Okay.
I view them from I look at them from a different viewpoint than you do. I see them more as how I would do X instead of this is a story using X. If I looked at it, this is a story using X character, I would most likely look at it from a completely different lens. Like objectively, the Percy Jackson movies are all right movies on their own. But if you want them to be a good adaptation, like the Lord of the Ring movies, they are an awful adaptation. Like the Harry Potter movies. Harry Potter movies are a good adaptation of the books. I don't look at the movies as adaptations. I look at them as Batman, Superman, Marvel stories. But this is also, I have not read the majority. I was a Spider-Man kid. I did not read much else. I read The Death of Superman, and that was the main Superman series I read.
Yeah, I remember you showed me it at a baseball game.
Dude, most of our comic talks happened at Suns games or Sharks games.
Yeah. Well, you got me into the Injustice world on a Sharks game where we were just sitting up in the high rafters.
Dude,
And
the
you just
app
were playing a
that
game, and then I just grabbed my iPod immediately and didn't even know what it was. Downloaded that game because it was superheroes, and I love superheroes.
Dude, the Injustice game was so good. It did get to a point though where like I didn't have as much time or like dedication to continue with the constant events, but I was good with it for a while.
Oh, they got real good. They started putting good stuff in there even after I left. Like they put in like a Rebirth Wally West Flash in there because they put in I think they eventually put in like when the Shazam movie came out, they put in that the Shazam actor in there. I think they put in a Killer Croc character in there at some point. So I mean, it got really. I don't know if I don't think they're still doing anything right now, but with that game.
So I think the reason for our difference in opinions, majority comes from the fact that I have not read most of the comics that you have. I have not read anything about Moon Knight. If I had, I would probably have that's what it is. I have zero expectations going into these things. You do because you have prior knowledge of the subject. I don't. I have zero knowledge of Eternals. I have a very rudimentary knowledge of Batman. I have zero knowledge of Moonlight or like Mandalorians. I don't have a lot of prior knowledge. So therefore, I don't have any expectation. I'm coming at it with give me what you got. And you're at I already have a standard. Let's see if you meet it.
Yeah, that's a
which
fair
makes
assumption.
complete sense.
I don't know how we're supposed to end this.
This has been my review and response to some of the topics brought up for Robert Pattinson's Batman. See you next time on Galactic Reviews.